So I have the pleasure today to talk to you about how to source startups for corporate innovation. And we have an exciting lineup of speakers for that. And before I will introduce them to you, let me briefly walk you through the agenda and what it's all about. So we will be speaking about one of the most prominent innovation strategies in external innovation, which is around sourcing startups. And it's basically also around not only around sourcing and selecting them, but also around investing in them, accelerating them, incubating them, which we also do like to call corporate venture investment or corporate venture capital. So the key question basically is how to source startups for corporate innovation, how to make sense of it, how to fuel your innovation strategy with it. We will talk about why external innovation and sourcing ideas from startups is beneficial in general. We will talk about how to build and manage an innovation funnel with external innovation, including challenges coming with that with regards to competing complementary products and services of those startups. And we'll also talk about an outlook on innovation and ask our speakers for any advice they can give us on the importance of external innovation in corporate venture capital. My request to the audience will be, if you have any questions, please feel free to post them on the chat. We'll try to either incorporate them while we talk or save some time during the after our last topics for a Q&A. So as I will be now announcing our speakers, I would like to also ask you to give a warm welcome in our chat to our speakers. Our first speaker will be Maximilian Schausberger, who is Managing Director at Elevator Ventures, which is the corporate venture capital fund of the Raiffeisen Bank International. Max's focus is on early stage and growth investment in fintechs and related enabling technologies throughout Central and Eastern Europe. And Max innovation strategy and guidance is we do transform continuous innovation into superior customer experience. Welcome, Max.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you, Max, for being here. Our next speaker, which I would like to call to our panel, is Jonathan Denais. He is Managing Director of Open CNP and Head of Investments of CNP Insurances. CNP, for the ones that do not know it, and I hope I pronounce it correctly, but please correct me then, Jonathan. It's Caisse Nationale de Prévoyance and is a major French insurance company corporation listed in the Fortune Global 500. Jonathan's innovation strategy is guided by that he's saying our goal is to partner with and to learn from startups building the future of finance and insurance. Welcome, Jonathan.
Hi, thanks for introducing me, and don't worry, we always say CNP, so
okay. Cool, then we'll stay with CNP. Thanks for that, Jonathan. Our next speaker will be Warwick Hill, which I would like to call to the panel. Warwick, besides numerous CEO positions that he did held and is still holding, he also is engaged in numerous board member positions and used to be responsible for Microsoft's startup investment, scouting, and collaboration arm within Europe. Warwick says technology development cycles are shortening. Always be prepared to disrupt yourself as well as the market. Welcome, Warwick.
Hi, Moritz. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here. Look forward to the conversation.
Cool, great. So welcome again. It's a large pleasure to have you all on the panel. So let's go right into it and start to talk about why external innovation and sourcing ideas from startups is beneficial in general. So Warwick, maybe confronting questions, maybe with regards to also Max and Jonathan. Why do you believe companies such as Raiffeisen Bank International, which is a renowned big corporation and bank, and also CNP, why do they rely so much on external innovation? Can't they source enough ideas from their own teams?
It's an interesting question, and I think every large enterprise, should ask themselves whether we've got the internal mechanisms within the organization to drive innovation, or whether they should collaborate with externals. And I think the finding that right pivot point is essential when you are starting to disrupt yourself. I think a lot of the big incumbent players, people have very busy lives. They've got their own internal KPIs that they've got to achieve to please their, their direct line manager and then the senior management thereafter. And I think that, when you start to look at innovation, it becomes a secondary resource that doesn't really have the focus put on it internally. And I think I've seen that with a number of very large organizations, and it becomes a plaything. It doesn't become an impetus to change. So I think looking at the companies that have successfully adopted change have a real program where they not only disrupt themselves, but they start to look at how they do business and see whether they can adopt an outside-in approach. And I think the outside-in approach gives them far greater understanding of what's happening in the ecosystem, what's happening around them, what's happening in the competitive space of their products. And that should give them a lot of insights into how do they build more robust products for themselves, and what do they need to build to generate satisfaction with their customers. So, I think it's a very important mix that should be in people's, certainly in their KPIs inside a large organization.
So you're saying, Warwick, the good news is they are very much capable of innovating also by themselves, but basically adding another fuel to that innovation stream with external ideas is very much recommended for basically every venture probably out there, right?
I think there are pros and cons, right? So inside a very large organization, you've got competing KPIs that people have to achieve to maintain their roles and stuff. I think that, the advantages of doing internal innovation is that the company, the internal mechanisms, the systems you have to integrate into, but the deficiencies can be speed and time to market, and the necessary outside skills that you need to really produce a well-rounded product. But I think as long as you can navigate the pros and the cons, you should be able to achieve a pretty worthwhile outcome.
Let's ask Maximilian. Max, is that true? So I know we've talked about it in our preparation that your parents' company, so for Raiffeisen Bank International CEO Johann Strobel, said Elevator Ventures is an integral part of our long-term innovation strategy at the Raiffeisen Bank International in general. So he does acknowledge the utmost importance of this. What benefits does external innovation, specifically sourcing startups, have for you in the bank, Max?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's indeed an integral part of this innovation strategy, and even more, it becomes crucial for us as a bank, and I think a lot of other organizations feel the same way, to have a structured approach towards all those ideas that are flying around outside of our organization. It's never been easier to found a startup. It's indeed never been easier to found a fintech or a financial services company. And there are a lot of people out there, on the one hand, coming from universities with a lot of new ideas, but on the other hand, don't underestimate the people that actually have experience previously in corporates, and then at some point in time in their life say, I've seen so many pain points in my job so far that are unsolved, and I would know how to do it, and who are now in the times of cloud computing, in times of capital that is available, in times of banking as a service products out there, able to pretty fast start their own ventures and try out new things. And I think in this trying out new things, there is the magic. Startups do have the advantage to corporates that they can that they usually know very well some pain points of the customers and customer behavior, and are very fast to adapt to this. And in some situations, they can simply be faster in serving newly evolving customer demands and maybe serve better certain segments of customers, which are simply better served by low-cost digital structures as a incumbent could provide. So for us, it is very important to have, besides the option of buying or building certain services, also the option to partner with some of these players. And that's why we actually, and very much driven by our CEO, Mr. Strobel, in 2017 said, okay, let's foster this partnership approach with fintechs, with startups. And we set up a very structured program that was called Elevator Lab. We were screening all over the globe, actually, for startups in certain innovation fields. We did then filter out and select the best fitting ones to us. So not only in the innovation team, but together with the experts from the bank. And then we ran into pilot projects with them. And actually, out of this pilot projects, a lot has evolved. Over the last 3 years, services and products have been integrated into our product offering. Some of the services of fintechs and beyond are used by the bank itself. And it is really a proof point that these startup interactions are not only, I would say, sometimes they are only seen as innovation events to entertain this field of for a CEO to say, yeah, we are doing it, but no, there is more in it, and that you can really achieve value out of this. And I think what Mr. Strobel then said, that the VC is an integral part, was simply that we said, okay, after this experience, that startup collaboration does make sense for a bank. We also want to do the next step and invest into these startups, invest in the alumni from our partnership program, but also invest into companies that maybe are not partners today for us because they are too innovative, or too early, but might be partners in 3 to 5 years down the road. And let's invest early on over our venture capital fund into these companies. Maybe as an
and there are some possible conflicts arising with that, right? When we come to talking about products that are complementary, not complementary, competing, and the like, and would love to talk also later with you about it. But thanks for the introduction there, Maximilian. It's very very informative. Before we go to the next topic of talking about this possible conflict, would love to hear from Jonathan, from your point of view, benefits of that very strict external innovation strategy, also from Open CNP. And maybe you can also give us one example of a current startup that you recently were able to find successfully. I think you're still muted, Jonathan. Let me try if I can. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Max mentioned the buy versus build debate. I think it is quite similar with innovation, and our role with Open CNP is partly to provoke these debates, and we've had internally discussions that led CNP to say, hey, on these innovation topics, we're going to do internally because we think this is part of our core value proposition, and on these, we're ready to work with startups, and we think either we don't have the right tools, we're not mature enough, or this is not a priority enough that we should use something external to enable us to accelerate. And the reason why we built Open CNP is we wanted to make this into a structure that is professional and efficient, because you have already a lot of contacts from startups to CNP naturally with the different business units. But the challenge with startups is also finding the right ones, because there's tens, hundreds of them that will contact you, but you really want to be working with the best among them, and the difference can be quite significant. So for us, the goal of this external innovation program, I think the first one is primarily learning from working with them. So this means involving a lot of different stakeholders internally when we were working with these startups. So it's not just a financial relationship, and enabling them to spread the good practices, the innovations that they see to the different to internal projects afterwards. It's also a way for us as an organization to put a foot in, test new trends that are emerging and that we think could have a lot of potential, to see, is there really something in there? This could be anything from new kinds of insurance products for us, could be blockchain, could be, and you have trends that will deliver impressive returns and others that will fizzle out. So it's a way for us to test these. The other goal for us is to build partnerships with these companies, and that could be commercial partnerships. To give you an example, as requested, we're investors in a new insurance company called Alan. They have their own license and balance sheet. But we wanted to support them, and we've been working with them, and we are supporting them in two ways. We are their primary reinsurer, so we're taking on some of the risk that they carry, and we are also distributing some insurance products that they don't want to do in-house yet, but that their clients are interested into, and that we make and they distribute. And it's very much a mutually beneficial relationship, because everyone's happy. We're making money, they're making money, and they're serving their customers. So
that's always a good point. Everybody's making money. And Jonathan,
that's the good case. And just to finish, I think that the last goal, because we have a fund, is also financial returns.
Yes. Of course, yeah. And I would be curious, because what also questions from the audience coming from Greg, and sorry if I don't pronounce your name, Greg Krasinski, correctly, but I was also going to ask that question to you guys. Maybe you can talk about also with regards to this example of Alan, with regards to this company. How do you find such a startup? How do you really find them? How do they appear on your radar, Jonathan?
It's nothing very original. We have a network we maintain. We have a lot of contacts from the business units. Usually we do events in person. At the moment, that's not really possible. We can do remote. We also work with a number of venture funds that we have long relationships with. So it's not very original. It's just a lot of work, and we try to find in each topic that we look into and that we're interested into, the ones that are both most relevant and most efficient on the market.
Okay, so if you're an insurtech company, please write us here in the comments, and we may connect you to Jonathan on this. Maximilian, what's your approach on scouting startups? How do you find those?
So for the partnership program, we have calls actually, where we define together with our business line certain topics that are interesting for them, where they would like to see innovation, and where they are willing to run pilot projects. And these we of course advertise through our social media channels, through our network partners. We have globally, we have offices of RBI all across the globe who are doing an amazing job also in advertising for this. In our countries in Central and Eastern Europe, we have universal banking banks there, and they are very close to the fintech ecosystems of the particular countries. So we do have our network, and it's definitely not enough just to publish something on your homepage and hope that something
That was going to be like my next question. Like, is it more of an active or more an active approach? I mean, I guess it does have to do also with brand, right? So if you're a big brand, then you probably may be able to take a more passive approach because companies will approach you directly. How do you see that open question? Maybe also Warwick, if you do have an opinion to that based on your experience, what's more recommendable?
I think it's, you get out of it what you put in. And, at Microsoft, we were very, very lucky. We used to sit at the top of the food chain. So our funnel, although it was extensive, it went from the entire ecosystem. And as they got closer to us, the kind of the weaker companies dropped off the radar, right? So as they go through accelerators, as they go through venture capital, as they go through, PE and stuff, that the companies get stronger and stronger. So that by the time they came to us at the end of the funnel, I must have seen about 1,500 companies in the space of 4 years, and those were the top of the range. I don't know how many startups there are across Europe, and I'd hate to think, what everybody pays and how many hours it takes to sift through that. So I think it's one of those things, you've got to build a mechanism. You just have to, because it's got to be repeatable. It's got to be scalable. And these guys are just financial services. When I was at Microsoft, we were doing everything. We were doing retail. We were doing manufacturing. We were doing, health tech, insure tech. We were doing absolutely everything. So, to attract everybody from those different ecosystems, we used to have 3 or 4 people that used to go and sit with accelerators, 3 or 4 people that used to generate social content, but also, the brand itself, with startups wanting cloud credits and things like that, used to drive a pretty good engine as well. But, if you don't have these mechanisms, it's like starting a stone rolling. You've got to push the hard yards at the beginning, but once it's rolling, actually you can start building momentum.
That means you need a very rigid mechanism of assessing those startups, right? In order to, if you have 10,000 startups applying, I don't know how it was for Microsoft each month or each year. Yeah. You need a very good assessment structure and processes in place, right?
Exactly. You got to know what you're looking for. So, ultimately, I'm sure Jonathan and Max have the same sort of criteria when it comes to onboarding startups into their organizations. They have to be of a certain size. They've got to be taking on a risk profile as they come into the business. They've got to be able to provide a necessary understanding and the answers for procurement, and they've got to be robust enough to be there in 12 to 18 months, or else the enterprise can't build a solution around them. So it takes the smaller startups out of the equation, and the bigger sort of scale ups become more important to that innovation pipeline.
Mm-hmm. And Warwick, since you also talked about it and you mentioned venture capital, right? So what do you think is like the difference between a corporate venture capital investing and the classical VC strategies? So in terms of, I mean, the core question is at Max, and also Jonathan mentioned during the beginning, right? Why do I invest in such startup? Is it just for financial returns, or it's a big plan to incorporate those products and services into my portfolio? So what's the difference from your point of view?
I think now that I run my own venture capital company, it's quite easy for me to align with one KPI, right? Which is find the best companies, help them grow and build value with that company. But running the Microsoft program, you had competing KPIs. You had to not only make money, you had to find the next generation or the next unicorn, the next Twitter, the next Facebook, etc., and get them onto the platform, get them onto the Azure platform, and then help them scale out their business using Microsoft products and Microsoft clients, right? So there's competing KPIs there. Ultimately, you can do both. If you are very, very structured on who you take in and who you then support going into the food chain. We've supported a couple of companies who have gone on to Series B, Series C, Series D, and there's a couple of companies that we put forward that have actually been acquired. So, you've got to understand that Microsoft is a very, very big company. They're looking for broader type services because the cloud service is like a cloth on a table. they're not going deep, but they want to go broad. So a startup that comes into my remit would be something that can be deployable worldwide and can add value to a myriad of customers, not just the kind of the sphere that the startup is aiming at. So, you know, we used to look at many companies, and they would pass the innovation tick, but not provide the necessary service portfolio that we needed as Microsoft. So, you know, having those competing KPIs was a bit of a challenge at times, because you wanted to invest in some really great companies, but you couldn't because it didn't have a service portfolio at the back end. So now that I've got a single KPI, it's a lot simpler. You know, I can just put money in and help them grow.
I bet, yeah, it's a little bit more straightforward. How's that for RBI and Elevator Ventures, Max? So maybe let's also think in terms of organizational structures, setups, goals, shared goals, and so on. So what you would say is the best setup? So is it better if the corporate venture capital fund and the parent company are separate entities with different goals, or with shared goals from a long point strategy point of view?
It depends on what you want to achieve with a venture capital fund. For us, it was quite clear that we have the structure in place inside the bank to run partnerships, but we see that we are limited in, I would say, what you call the horizons, McKinsey or BCG's horizons of course, if you want the core organization to deal and engage with a startup, it can't be too far away from their goals that they have in their business line MBOs. Otherwise, the chances that there's real outcome decrease immensely. And we said we want to do VC to be close to companies that might be relevant going further down the road, who are maybe in horizon 2 or 3, and maybe also beyond banking, just to be close to the top teams from our region who deal with that. And having this in mind, I think the venture capital activities and the CVC activities should be as freely as possible, as agile as possible. I heard that there are CVCs who need to actually convince a business line before they are allowed to invest. Might make sense for some other companies, for example, Microsoft. If you say, okay, I only invest if they are using my platform, then that's another goal than what we are doing. And we have luckily a setup where we have a investment committee. It's there are 4 people of the top management of RBI, and there is our team and the managing directors who propose the deals, and we can be very fast in decision making, which is necessary in our day-to-day VC business. I don't think that the question if it's a financial or strategically driven VC are mutually exclusive. I think how a CVC should be set up should definitely and be steered should be as venture capital like as possible. For us, our clear KPI is internal rate of return for our LP being the corporate. But due to our strategy, this is actually aligned with the strategy of the bank, because our assumption is that we can have a superior IRR because we have the company in the back, because we have the network of the bank. We have the pipeline. We have unique deal flow from Central and Eastern Europe because we have our banks in these regions, because we are close to the innovation ecosystems. We can select the best startups because we have the experts from the bank. And we can drive their growth because we have the network of the bank. So I think that having, for us, the goal of driving superior IRR for us means that we need to be close to the bank because that's the main USP and asset that we have as a venture capital fund.
Makes total sense, and at the same time, I could imagine it is very difficult and a challenging job if you are investing in startups that are more on the, let's say, horizon 3, on the more disruptive side of products and services, tying that back to your business units and the core strategy. So it's, I guess, a very challenging job at that point of time, even though when time to markets get quicker and horizons 1 to 3 kind of merge together, or at least when it comes to timely differentiation, right? I would like to use the time, guys, because we are unfortunately but naturally running out of time. We have until 12:14. I would like to use the time to still talk a little bit of, because I know the audience is also interested in it, to talk a little bit about the outlook on innovation and maybe your advice that you want to give to the audience. Jonathan, what do you think, where's the importance of external innovation when it comes to CVC be going at? Is that a trend that's going to be growing, or where's it going?
I think that there are several layers of answer here. If we look at the past, if whenever there's a crisis, the corporate venture fund industry has taken a bad beating, and I think we'll see that in some sectors that are directly affected by the crisis. I don't think that's the case for Max or Warwick, luckily, nor it is for ourselves. I think this we see a lot of corporate venture funds that are starting up. The ones that are working well often then are moving to either an independent model or a big focus on financial returns, and are getting kind of more professional, more similar to VCs. And that can also mean that the strategic angle hasn't worked in some cases. I'm not saying it's always the case, but it is a challenge. The difficulty here is that for a lot of corporations, what to expect, the goals and the results from external innovation is something that is still very much up in the air. And I think it's also one of the goals of this funds to kind of challenge and help the group define this innovation strategy. I think we'll see it rise more broadly in the future. It's already quite a big chunk of the VC market at the moment, 20 to 25%. It could go higher. I think the difference will be, and the ones that will be successful are the ones who can, for startups, articulate a value proposition that is different from what the others are doing, and that is very interesting. That's what we are trying to do. VCs have a long-standing expertise. Traditional VCs have a long-standing expertise in helping companies grow, in helping them accelerate. Corporate VCs are usually younger, so have less of this expertise. But if you can build partnerships that are very impactful to the startups that you're working with, that's very, very different. And for example, we are also usually sector specialists. Max is focused on fintech a lot. I'm assuming we are focused on fintech and insurtech. We know these topics in a lot of detail. We have experts internally that we can leverage, and this is something that I think almost no traditional VC can compete with.
Yeah,
and we'll see what the market sorts out in the end. But we've seen a lot of maturity, a lot more maturity now. I think from corporate VC, we've moved on from kind of a Wild West market where everyone was doing something kind of different. Yeah. Not everyone was playing fair or doing right by the startups. And now
directly, Jonathan, if Warwick agrees to what you said, I would be also curious on maybe your perspective, because our event is called also innovation labs. Warwick, how do you see the role of CVCs versus VCs, and then maybe also versus innovation labs?
I think if we just sort of take a step back for a second, I think, innovation labs, corporate VC, external innovation, internal innovation, they all work. I think Max has hit the nail on the head. They all work when the CEO is involved. The CEO from the top down sets the strategy. Everybody understands that their roles are to not only do their day jobs, but to scout, to bring in internal disruption into their daily lives, to make their jobs easier, to make their client onboarding easier, to make their clients, produce more money. I think that is a fundamental going forward. And I think that the people that have successful CVCs, it's top down. It's never bottom up. The ones that I've seen, fail and do not very well are always, it is a secondary or even a tertiary thought at board level. It just doesn't work. You're always pushing against the mainstream of the business, and I think you've got to have the top-down approach. And for looking at what traditional VCs are good at, they're good at scouting. They're good at finding interesting companies and then giving them cash. I will debate whether they actually help them accelerate or not. I don't think they do, because I think traditional VCs have very poor relationships with corporates. They traditionally don't sit well together, even though now a lot of the big US corporates are coming, the big US VCs are coming to London to build accelerator programs, because they're starting to see that they need to have that collaboration with the corporate to hand off some of the bigger Series B, Series C companies that they've been sort of helping through that growth cycle. Yeah. So I
maybe also good that we're connecting you guys here during the event, Warwick.
Yeah, absolutely. At the end of the day, we traditionally, if you gave the VC the option of putting 5 million into a company and then just watching it grow, that's typically what they used to do, right? But now they have to do so much more, because they put money in, they've got to help introduce them to customers, they've got to help techies on board to build better products. And it's not just about putting money in these days. It's about making sure that the management are mature, helping them build out their product set, interacting with end user clients to make sure that the company's building correctly and getting the strategy right. And I think, the traditional VCs are now having to change a fundamental part of their business, where 50% of that team is being broken out and a new team is being installed, which is also about helping companies grow. So taking a Series A company and helping it grow to being Series B, funding it, and then moving it on into a corporate partnership. So I think there's new teams being formed in VCs, and I think John is right as well. We're going to see a disruption happen, and I think that disruption is going to be top down. I think the CVCs are going to come in. They're going to traditionally look at where they sit, and I think they're going to go broader. They're going to go from angel through to Series B, depending on whether it's corporately aligned on their strategy, or whether it's a competing product that they want to onboard and get to know better. And I just see the whole market being enthusiastic post pandemic, where a lot of money is going to be made by the new work from home mentality, where people can just do more things digitally, and companies are now looking at how can they embrace technology rather than how do they onboard it safely and de-risk it. So there's a new mentality coming alive inside companies. I think it's a very special time to have a company and to be part of it.
That's actually a very good closing statement, Warwick. It helps me to wrap this up. I hope there will be a steady flow of new ideas coming to you guys from startups, and I appreciate that you took the time to talk to us and to our audience. Has been very insightful and nice to the audience. If there have been questions that we couldn't answer yet, please throw them to us. We'll try to position them at Max Johnson or Warwick, or if you did have interest with regards to the InsurTech and FinTech events, we also try to pass them through. Has been a pleasure to talk to you all. Thanks again for your time. Dear audience, you will, after a short break, you will have the pleasure to talk to our experts with the and panelists on turning problems into prototypes. Thank you guys, and see you soon.
Thank you.